Welcome back again, folks. This is Chris Temple, editor and publisher of the National Investor, and we have another guest today who is going to be a very important part of our green energy and critical minerals panel at the upcoming Strategic Investment Insights Conference. It will be the 6th and 7th of May, Friday and Saturday, at the Lincolnshire Marriott Hotel. If you've not already registered, we'd encourage you to do so. You see on the screen here the link to go to our website, where you'll also learn an awful lot about what the agenda is, the different companies from different sectors we will have there, and so forth. And today's guest, Emily Hersh, is going to be there with us on the panel. Emily, I'm greatly looking forward to that, and I'm thankful you could join us for a few minutes today to give people a preview.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to chat with you today, Chris, and even more excited to participate in this upcoming event to talk about some of the battery mineral supply chain issues that 3 years ago were a niche weirdo topic, and now my uncle's brother's grandfather's nephew has read 6 articles in the New York Times over the past month or two about how the U.S. supply chain's in a bit of trouble.
Well, and that's an understatement. We've got a situation where a lot of promises have been made by both politicians and automakers, and no game plan really for us to do that. Now, you've already had a very active and well-traveled life for a young woman all over the Western Hemisphere. You spent a lot of time in South America. You've studied the lithium industry and other battery metals. What prompted you to get into this field when other things were out there? And of course, I don't have to tell you that for a lot of people today, the last job that they look for is to get into the extractive industries, frankly. And I think that's one of the problems we have, isn't it, Emily, that you look at the average age of miners and engineers and stuff like that. We've got a terrible labor shortage.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's shortages everywhere. I think that when I explain to people what my job is, mineral exploration, I like to tell them I get to play outside with really big Tonka trucks. Because I can't imagine somebody who wouldn't be interested in getting into that. That said, when looking at sort of the aging population that does make up the majority of the mining industry in the United States, folks that you see that are around my age or in their 40s or 50s, a lot of them are only in the industry because they had a parent who was in the industry as well. And so the industry, I think, especially in the United States, has a lot of outreach to do to make some of these career paths available to and on the radar of younger people. Because like I said, I mean, spend your life behind a computer making PowerPoints, or spend your days out in the sunshine learning science and doing things that are putting the green revolution, or putting the pieces in play that are going to allow for the next generation of how energy is used by human civilization. I mean, in my books, that's an easy enough choice, but understanding the path to get there is, it's not straightforward. And frankly, my own path probably isn't one that folks could replicate. So I'm from the DC area originally, and I spent 2010 through 2020 living and working in Argentina. So I studied economics, and I was very focused as an economist at looking at the importance of oil, and oil as the source of energy and power behind what makes civilizations tick. So, Daniel Jurgens' The Prize was sort of the book I read the most when I was in school. And so when I moved to South America and opened my own consulting firm, my first clients were in the oil and gas industry. So I would work with companies to kind of figure out the ins and outs of logistics and infrastructure challenges of operating in Latin America, as well as I would say the sort of the more colorful bits of handling Latin politics and Latin bureaucracy. So when I got my first gold mining project in about 2013, wow. And never looked back from mining back to oil and gas. So I really enjoyed not just the sort of the gold and mining story, but the exploration portion of putting together early stage mineral resource projects. But as a student of the world, I found gold to be a philosophically silly undertaking or endeavor that we the humans do, because we put a lot of work. Don't tell Brian Lundin about this, because he'll cut me off of his conferences, but it's a silly thing that we spend all this time and energy and money to pull something out from under a mountain just to mail it and put it in a basement in Switzerland, right?
Well, it's kind of like what Warren Buffett always said. You dig it out of a hole in the ground and you bury it in a vault.
Yeah, which is fine, right? But I was like, right, do I really want to put my life's work behind, moving something from a natural basement to a man-made basement? And I'll still do a good gold project. I'm not going to lie, but I really got interested in lithium around 2013. And I took the same approach that I take with most problems that I jump into, where I try my best to educate myself as much as possible and get to know the players and try to figure out where, an American girl living in South America can fit in and add value and do a business that I'm able to contribute to society, make a decent amount of money, do something that means something. And so I started working with both large mining companies who were looking at trying to integrate renewable energy production with storage, because when you're running a mine, you need a 24-hour block of energy writ large, so you don't have any cycles. And started working with folks with interesting early stage lithium projects in Argentina, as well as larger companies with more advanced lithium projects in Argentina and Peru. I started being the loudmouth that I try to always support myself being, but giving a lot of talks and participating in advocating for a greater understanding of the role of lithium in the energy that's going to underpin civilization in the future, as well as educating folks and helping both governments and companies and actors understand where they fit in on that supply chain, because it's not like gold or copper. You don't just pull the lithium up, refine it a bit, and throw it into a ready-made supply chain. We're talking about a complex ecosystem of actors that are being, you've got supply and demand forces that are shaping how the battery story is moving along. And then each pillar of the supply chain is being influenced by technological innovations that are happening at each stage. And so it's a lot of chaos and a lot of moving parts. And so in that role, and as an American by training, I guess, I started being more aware of the vast chasm of both investment and technological development that existed between the United States and China. And so I decided in August of 2020, do I sit behind a Zoom and tell other people what I think should happen, or do I, pack my bags, come up to the US and try to put into action my values and do what I can to develop the lithium story and develop the critical minerals supply chain story from the domestic US. And so that's how I got back to America, and that's how I ended up running a lithium exploration company and having bigger and cooler Tonka trucks than I would have dreamed 2 years ago at my disposal.
Yeah. Now, as the CEO of Luna Lithium, and we should let folks know that this is something that is approaching an IPO at some point, not too far down the road, correct?
We're looking at the best public transaction for the shareholders, and also to put the project in a position to succeed going forward.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about this ground. This is in Nevada.
Yeah, absolutely. So in about August 2020, a good friend of mine who's actually in the direct lithium extraction world gave me a call and said, listen, I've been talking to some prospectors in Nevada who have put together an interesting land position on an untested brine target. And so I took a look, looked for sort of obvious reasons why not to do the project. They didn't exist. So I started raising money privately with just my friends and family to do a bit of geophysical work, tie up the land position, expand it a little bit. The results of the geophysical work, the sort of above surface tests that we're able to do, came back looking good, came back looking really good. And so I sort of started over that period of time expanding my investor network to especially folks I know and have worked with in the past from the lithium industry to advance quickly and get a drill on site as of the end of March. And as of last night, we're down to about 1,350 feet of boring. So got some samples in the lab and we'll get some results coming up real soon. But yeah, it's a case of, this is the first time that I've worn the CEO hat. But in the advisory roles that I've worked across in the industry with governments, with bigger and smaller companies, I've done what I can to use money efficiently but quickly. And working as a private company for the first year, we've been able to, I think, hone in our activities on what's increasing the value writ large by
Okay,
a combination of land position, water rights, strong surface level results, and then getting into the results that can lead to moving a project forward more quickly, depending on what the results look like.
gotcha. Well, I'm going to be anxious, I know myself, to learn more about that project and what its prospects are. Real quick, as we wrap up, at least for right this minute, Emily, I know that at least to some extent, your interest in being a CEO of a lithium company was because you look at the secular dynamics of lithium specifically and battery metals generally. What is your sense right now? I mean, we just had, for example, President Biden a couple of weeks or so ago invoked the Defense Production Act and claimed that he wanted to accelerate the accessibility to battery metals and critical minerals and things like that in the US. What is your view of that? Do you think that this is a serious move and that finally we're going to start to see development and then production meet the extraordinary demand, which we can't fill right now?
It's a step in the right direction. And I'm more excited by or comforted by the bipartisan support that we've seen for moving forward, not just with critical minerals production, but with pulling pieces of the supply chain into North America. I think that folks who haven't been in the lithium story or have understood what it takes to put together from a mine into a battery in terms of investment, in terms of figuring out things, and in terms of just putting all the pieces together. You know, I still haven't yet come across someone in the government who seems to have realistic expectations for the timeframes that exist. You know, I can make cases or look at any project and say, right, if that company had all the money in the world and every permit they could ever want, this is still how long it would take to build this.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. And then when you layer in, market uncertainty, right? We're in a bull market right now. Mineral prices are cyclical. And, the fact that we've run up lithium prices by, hundreds of %, the minute that trend moves even a little bit in the other direction, all of the folks who are greedily calling my phone on a daily basis won't pick my phone up for another couple of months. And having people, the Biden administration, Democrats or Republicans in the congressional bodies, having somebody come at it and openly say, listen, we're going to be here to backstop these cycles, that's a good use of time and money.
Right.
But I think that especially the financial markets in the United States are much more comfortable with working in industries that have much quicker returns, much less CapEx, infrastructure related expenditure, and just much quicker timelines to profitability. And, I'm a lot of bad things, but I'm not a liar. And building a mine takes a long time. It takes a lot of money. And then when you're looking at lithium chemicals or any of the other chemicals from the critical mineral supply chain standpoint, that process of taking something that works in a lab and scaling it up to commercial stage is a trial and error, back and forth, finicky thing.
Yeah.
And so I would definitely find the government's words more serious, for lack of a better expression, if there were more of an understanding to that baked in on both the cyclicality of financial markets and the finicky nature of scaling up chemical processes.
Yeah. Well, and once upon a time, we saw President Obama throw a big subsidy at Solyndra when we've seen subsidies beyond all reality and reason at wind farms, when we've got something that is a far better solution long-term And more important, it's a good point. There needs to be some certainty. And I think people need to be confident that whether it's the Democrats or Republicans in charge, that yes, we are serious about building this out. No, we don't think that batteries and electric vehicles come from, unicorn urine and fairy dust. Yes.
I don't think scaling up your unicorn urine production would be in any way an environmentally responsible activity.
Yeah.
I try to be constructive in all settings. I can do the best I can. I can educate,
Yeah.
But in terms of if any branch of the government says that they're going to be serious about this, then the folks, the Bureau of Land Management's budget, it's not sufficient to undertake their job. Fact, the money I lost or I would lose with, 2 weeks of permitting delays, that's 3 salaries a year.
Yep.
Right. So using the resources we have at hand efficiently. And I think that, both from a government standpoint and from a communication with citizens standpoint, see the forest, don't focus on 1 or 2 trees.
Absolutely.
We're on a wave. Do your best on the wave, but don't stop the wave because there's 1 or 2 little issues with it. Like, acknowledge problems, work to change them in the future, but the finger pointing and everything, it's not for me.
Yeah, well, I hear you. All right, well said. Look, we're going to look forward to having you on the panel. There's a lot of stuff that we need to get our heads around as citizens from a public policy standpoint and everything else. So Emily, thanks for your time today. And we'll be looking forward to having you in Chicago, and lots to kick around.
Thanks so much, Chris. I really appreciated it.
Take care.